And good morning, Hoosier Nation, and welcome to another relieving, victorious, I would say, edition of Hoosier Morning After. This is Hoosier Morning After Ohio State. Your Indiana Hoosiers go on to defeat in overtime the Buckeyes in Ohio, 77-76 in overtime. Really a nice response from the team after quite a storm on social media, quite a midweek hit to Hoosier Nation to have to go through. A little bit still, though, of a sluggish start with a new face in the lineup as we see Leal starts for Galloway in this game. Goode really kind of, as we'll talk about later, sets the tone in this one for the team on what would be a career game for him. IU would go into the half down by 6. Second half, IU started with a little bit more of that energy that we've seen in a run, thanks to Goode and Ballo, that would eventually take IU to the lead for a majority of that half. Lead got up to about 10 with 5 minutes left. Ohio State went on a little run late with some IU miscommunications on one of their best three-point shooters, guys not switching and staying with it. Would kind of lead the game to a lot closer than we thought. IU would get 3 attempts at the basket with time almost running out, not getting them in to close it out. OT, overtime, was a little concerning, I will say, from the offensive side for me. Looked a little out of sorts, and IU kind of falling back to taking a few long twos. But it was a 3 from Luke Goode that would end up putting IU ahead by 1, and they would hold on by a blocked shot by good old Anthony Leal, similar to last season when Leal hit the game-winning 3. Ohio State probably does not like that kid and is happy he's graduating, but IU would hold on to win it and put us all at a little bit more ease and take a deep breath. Thank you for being here with me. I'm your host, Chad Schwartzkopf. New face on the show, a face not completely new because he was with us last season. Coach Bob Moats from X's and Joe's joins us. Coach, give me your opening thoughts on this game.
It's incredibly hard to win on the road in the Big Ten anywhere you go. I think earlier in this week, Michigan found that out at Minnesota. And anytime you can take your team in, get a win, especially in a game where it's as close as it was, it's good for your team. It's good moving forward. It's one game out of a season. And I think that's, I love that, Chad. I really like that you brought up that defensive miss switch, where I was just sitting over there watching that, and I'm thinking coming out of the ATO, and I think it was Jimmy Jackson said, well, they don't need a 3. I said, they're going to go for the 3. And I just like, they're going to draw something up, some sort of stagger. In that case, it was a little bit of a screen-to-screener action. And those are very hard to guard. But it kind of goes back to the idea that what I loved about IU last night was the effort seemed to be there more. There was more effort. Execution, we're still asking some questions as to just what are we doing at times on the court? What angles? What are we trying to take away offensively with the other team? How are we trying to attack a defense collectively as a group? We're still asking those questions a bit. And it's okay to still ask those questions because sometimes it does take a long time longer time. Some teams get it faster than others. But again, it was one of those things where, you walk out with a 1-point win, and that's good for the record. It's good for it. It stops the bleeding for one thing. Mm-hmm. It lets you live another day. But the other thing I think it goes back to is we're still trying to figure out exactly where the pieces fit. And I think that was kind of the big question that I had kind of leaving last night was, okay, so we made some changes in personnel. They didn't have Bryce and Tucker, which I think was one of those deals where it was kind of almost like a last minute sort of thing. They just didn't have, and they're still without Renew. So they're a little undermanned, but I will say this, for the first time, I really think that having a 3-driver lineup where you either had Goode or Mbako, and really it was Goode playing more that sort of perimeter big role with a post player. You have one post player, you have one bit taller, bigger perimeter player, and then you basically have 3 guards who can drive it and shoot it. We saw that actually work at times well, especially during the runs, the couple of runs they had in the second half. But a lot of that just seemed like it was just because of circumstances, because of foul trouble versus a designed concept that the team was moving forward.
Yeah, I liked what I saw from that, and I was hoping to a degree too. What it seemed like it bred was less long twos. You saw IU settle for less long twos. They were trying to get into the paint and create that kind of thing. And you say an interesting thing with IU finding that identity still, and you hate to see that or hear that or say that about your team this late into the season. I will say late because there's still plenty of time. But I think the one thing that gives me hope of an identity that's hopefully starting to get brewing is something that IU and Hoosier Nation loves. And it's that fight, like you said, that aggressiveness and everything. And I think where we saw that and where it was led was from Luke Goode. I mean, he had a career game, a hell of a response, backing up all the talk he was doing. He got really fired up, and he's an Indiana kid, has grown up loving this program. So he took offense to a lot of the vitriol that was happening, and that's fine, and that's great. It's great to get fired up, and especially when it reaps this kind of thing. You kind of hear that hearing like put up or shut up, and he put up in this game. I hope this is repeatable by him. And if so, let's get on social media right now after this show and start jokingly talking trash to him to get him fired up again, maybe. But I mean, you look at his stat line and it's great from a player like that. You've got 23 points, 7 for 14 from the field, 4 for 7 from 3, perfect at the free throw line, but just his emotions out there. I mean, he was that extra shade of red in this game, just being an animal out there. Your thoughts on what he brought this time?
Exactly what we thought he would bring from when he transferred from Illinois to Indiana, and not from a consistency standpoint. There are some guys that are they're going to get double-digit scoring. Ballo should almost be guaranteed a double-double every game he plays, just because of his body type and how he plays the game. Goody's the sort of guy that he's more of that sort of level 3 type scorer that's not going to create his own shot a whole lot. It's going to require other players to kind of get him open, and that's exactly what happened last night. They made the right reads. That's also what happened at the Palestra. I mean, when I was there at that game, where Goode in particular would get his shots because they were because the defense would be so focused on trying to stop, especially roll action with Ballo. And when you watch Omar Ballo run, and I know we're talking about Goode, but I think it's so essential to talk about what Ballo or even Renew at times can bring off of 2-man game actions. It requires 3, and coaches talk all the time. Even when you're coaching little, smaller, younger players, we want to try to get more, 2 defenders on the ball, 3 defenders on 2, 4 defenders on 3. And when you can do that, then you open up another player. And so when you get a guy like Ballo who just, he's going down there like a battleship, and it's going to require another player, and by tagging, you literally have to go in there like a fullback and try to block him. It's one of those deals where all of a sudden Goode pops open, and Trey Galloway or a Miles Rice or a Cannon Carlisle or Bryson Tucker can make that appropriate read. His release is so quick, his setup is so good, he can drill that. The other thing I love about him is that defensively, he's not the fastest, not the most fleet of foot player that you have out there, but he puts in a great deal of effort. He at least tries to slow up a ball handle off of a switch or his man. He doesn't overly rely on help. He rebounds well. There are plenty of times where I'm just looking, and you look up and you see the shots going up, and you look over the weak side, and he's already got his guy or a body sealed off from the lane. Rebounding is not always you get the ball when you seal it off. Oftentimes, rebounding is you're shielding the other team from getting it, and because Lord only knows where that ball is going to bounce. Yeah, 80% of the time goes weak side, 20% it goes strong side, but you just don't know. But you have to, at the very least, have everybody in position. He's great about getting in position. I think last night he did not just the big things of scoring, but the little things of being in the right place at the right time defensively, being in the right place, right time on when shots go up, and he's actually shooting twos for the first time in his in his college career. So, we're seeing him actually made a great cut in the first half where Galloway found him on a 45 cut that was just critical, because then it's giving the defense one more thing to think about.
Yeah, and that's that seniority in him, that experience, and that sees those holes a lot more than younger players will. And you teased Ballo there, so we will dig maybe a little deeper into that. And I think he was back to being a beast that he was. Played 40 minutes, played almost the whole second half. I think actually might have been the whole second half. 21 points on 8 for 14 shooting. Was good at the line again. Again, praise be to Calbert Chaney. 5 for 7, good for him. 8 offensive rebounds was huge. 7 defensive for 14 total, and second in assists in this game with 4 assists for us. He was clicked back in this game. You saw him diving for balls again, knocking things away. You felt like IU, that was one of the biggest complaints. If you take away all the vitriol and everything else and you're just analyzing the Illinois game, that was probably the biggest lacking thing in the game, was not going to Ballo, not planning to go to him and everything. And I don't know if that's the coaches, and maybe later we'll kind of discuss what kind of adjustments you thought you saw from the coaches in this one, but just thought he did so well. And those assists as well speaks to why I, in contrast to Malik's game, really enjoy Ballo's game, because Malik, when he gets the ball, he gets those blinders on and he's going to the basket. He's already made up his mind. That double team comes, and that's when he struggles. And while he has been better this year when he was playing Malik against the double and passing out of it, that's what Ballo does so well. It was featured a lot by the guys calling the game as well. They were pointing that out, but he's just so good at finding that skip pass and looking through that, being calm. You don't see him hurried up. You don't see that double team affect him. Your kind of thoughts to get a little bit deeper on Ballo.
Yeah, it's funny because I think that I really like him in movement. Like, I really like him going north-south off of ball screen action. I also like him when, and this is if you bring back the 2 bigs, when that happens, we have a couple, when you have another potential ball screener where he can duck in, dive to the, where he's off cuts. And that was his game at Arizona, why they were so effective with really 2 kind of post type players or 2 interior type scorers, was that he was really good at knowing when to make that read. He's grown that game, by the way, Chad. I think that was something he didn't do at Arizona. He really was, again, more of that off weak side type big player that his job was to basically to force rim protection into a help dilemma. So do I go take the ball handler away? Do I take the roll guy away? Or do I stay on my man close enough so I can get back in position and not stop him from getting a dunk or a lay-in? And we're seeing a lot of growth in that game because, as you said, he's calm. He's very poised. When he gets the ball there, and he knew Mahaffey was coming in, he knew exactly where the ball was going to be. So that, credit the coaching staff, credit film, or credit the scouting report to know where to deliver the ball. And he also he's a much better passer than he was a year ago at this time at Arizona. So whether that's, again, more work Calbert Chaney's put in player development, and the fact the kids put in the work, you're seeing some game improvements from Omar Ballo that I'm pleasantly surprised to see with him. The other thing is, and again, defensively, I think that he did much better at containing dribblers out on the perimeter, especially in the second half. I felt like this game, and we may get to this a little later, but they did a really good job as the game went on of not giving up the open driving lanes that they were giving up earlier in the game. There was more of a team effort not just to contain the dribble, but to also then get back out on shooters. So that was something that I was really kind of pleased to watch with Ballo, because I think something I've been noticing whenever I watch him, I don't exactly know what he's doing in ball screen coverage. Is he dropping? Is he at a hedge? Is he even? Are we trying to hard hedge it? And I think there's also some other times where you see players who are not really sure exactly, is he where he's supposed to be in ball coverage either, ball screen coverage. Going and again, it's a matter of where you're going, under the screen, over the screen. So those are the sorts of things where, I saw last night a little more clarity as to what they were trying to do with him there, and he was a little better at containing it.
Yeah, I think in the first half you saw a couple drives where he sits in that kind of no man's land with staying with his man and slightly tagging the driver. And I think I definitely saw a few moments, and it was kind of when Anthony Leal was in there, because I love seeing Leal when he gets switched on the big man. Just he's so good at still using his muscles and size to try to muscle on him. But there was one possession where you saw Ballo do the right thing and stick with the driver, and then it stopped the driver and he had to pass out of it. And then there was a moment in time where then they could switch back and he could back to his man and how it needed to be. There was obviously other times in this game and in the past where that hasn't been. So you saw that great. And we will maybe this is the time then to talk about the defense, because then obviously that other issue was like what we teased at the beginning was those defensive breakdowns on the little screen handoffs. And you probably worst offense of that was probably from your two most senior majority players, was a moment where Galloway and Goode got locked up, and Goode kind of stayed glued to Galloway almost and left the 3-point shooter to just kind of have a wide open shot. And you saw them get aggravated and talk about it afterwards. So at least there was some discussion from that breakdown. But what did you see in this defense, maybe as it evolved in this game or compared to what's happened in these last two games?
I think first and foremost, the clarity was there, or at least the evolution was there as the game went on, where they were actually trying to, okay, we know what we want to do with Ohio State. We want to keep them here. We want to keep them kind of out of the paint necessarily, without not having as much one-on-one work. I love that you brought up again that play with Galloway and Goode, them talking about it on the way, basically after the only time they communicated was after the shot went in. And it was like one of those types of deals where they were coming, and it was coming out of timeout too. So the question was, was there a clarity of, are we switching everything? Are we staying on our man? That last instruction, because at that point in the game, you're going to say, we want to take the three away. Let's switch all screens. Doesn't matter what they do. If we give up the layup and get the ball back, we can try that as a tactical sort of move. I'm not sure if that was, I'm not going to say, I don't know. I'm not standing in the huddle, but I can also know that, you have two senior players. It's like the question is, there's, the confusion at 45 seconds at that key moment, probably not what you want, on that bench. And sometimes players make mistakes even in late game situations. But I felt that defensively, and again, this was a game where it was a rock fight. It was a shot making game, which meant you're schematically they were doing a lot of things that they've always done, but at the same time they were just executing it just better enough to stop Ohio State from getting a shot look to fall. They also, I think, did much better on the board coverage, and I don't know how much of that was, again, you had Goode and Leal, and I also think that they also had better guys in to contain. I think when they started going with the three guards, it doesn't even give you, sometimes this could be a personnel thing more than a schematic thing. So you have Carlisle, Rice, Galloway, Leal in the game playing three positions basically throughout most of the game. They're able to contain Ohio State, which is, again, more of a dribble drive type of team. They're not trying to outsize you. So they were able to cover their perimeter players better because you weren't trying to have Mbako try to guard Bruce Thornton on a screen, on a switch. You're not trying to have Luke Goode trying to guard their point guard. I can't think of his name off the top of my head, but trying to, getting him on a switch. Or, you actually now have three more perimeter-oriented defenders who are more like who can guard just quicker, that can actually cut them off. And you saw that last night a lot more than you usually do with than when you have the Mbako and Goode group in.
Yeah. And then I do want to speak on next. I think we've teased and talked about him a good amount, but a new face in the starting lineup with Anthony Leal. I liked that move to get someone in there that is just kind of be that do the right thing kind of player for IU. Obviously, you're losing a scorer, but again, there's enough guys that can score on this team that there's been games where I thought that they just need that guy that's gonna do the right thing in there in Leal, rather than just another scorer that's going to be, all right, here's, you shoot along to this time down. But just good job on defense, staying muscled up. I mean, Thornton's a tough guy to have to guard because he muscles his way into the paint and everything. But just on D, there was a couple moments when normally when you wouldn't be paying attention that were caught. And I forgot who it was that posted the video of it, but there was one moment when Ohio State was bringing the ball up and you saw Leal was watching the Ohio State coaching staff, seeing what play they were calling, and then turned around immediately and called out the defense to IU. That possession led to an Ohio State turnover. So Leal is in there watching the tape, and he is studying this game and knows what's going on. There was other moments, in this game that I saw from Leal that are really kind of dead ball things, don't really matter, but just shows the mentality that this team needs and that he brings, where after a whistle, either a dead ball, foul, anything that happened, you see players all the time will take that shot or try to do a layup or something when the time has stopped. Leal twice, one time putting his hand through the hoop and everything, went up there to reject it. Like, no, you're not going to take a free shot right now. And that doesn't mean anything in the course of the game as far as points or anything like that, more so than it does mentality. And it just shows the attack that he has and that. And I just, it's fantastic. This has been a dream come true for him as a Hoosier Nation and having an Indiana kid, a Bloomington kid, a guy that necessarily hasn't been a big contributor point wise, but has stuck with the team and is here as a senior. To have a season like this where he can come in and carve a niche for himself has been great. What are your thoughts on Leal in this game?
I'm thrilled for the kid. I think you hit the nail on the head with that. I really do, Chad, because I think it's a dream come true for a kid growing up in Bloomington, Indiana. Last one was what, Jared Jeffries, maybe? The last actual Bloomington High School player to.
No, you had Jordy.
Oh, that's right, Jordy Holes. Yeah, Of course, yeah, Jordy. Thank you. So you go down that list where it's like, there about once a decade maybe we get somebody from the city of Bloomington to come in. And I'm thrilled for the kid for that, just having the ability to do that in kind of his hometown. Maybe it's a uniquely Indiana thing. Maybe it isn't, but I know that in this state that definitely means something. I remember watching him as a senior in high school and thinking the kid just makes the right play. Now he had it was him and Connor Hickman playing at Bloomington South. And this was, 5 years ago. And sitting in Memorial Gym at Columbus North High School, watching him play and just saying, he just knows and like you're saying, like he's looking at the bench to give to basically get the set call out to set the defense. So he does the work, and he's, again, not the most physically gifted player that Indiana University's ever brought in, but he's got there through hard work and by not just by physically hardworking, but mentally hardworking and learning how to being a student of the game. So those things pay off. I mean, I've seen him, make adjustments in the middle of the, basically saying in the middle of an offensive possession, I'm going here to we can set up a corner three. So he can think ahead that way. He's not going to do it with the ball necessarily, but he's going to do it because he sees something and he can set it up and he can communicate it. And that being said, it's those, you'll look at him on the Ken Palm and you're like 4% of possessions used, but how many, the analytics cannot show you the number of possessions he impacts because of keeping the play alive, keeping, being in the right place on help side to take away the first or even second option for the other team's offense. And that last block, they go right at him. And, it's like he gets the big block and prevents Thornton from getting a really good look at the basket, which, again, you look at Bruce Thornton's line, much like you looked at Ace Baldwin's line in their win against Penn State, it wasn't good. That's not the sort of game Ohio State needs from Bruce Thornton. That's they need him to be a lot more efficient. They need him to be a lot more effective. And I wouldn't say he was fully neutralized, but he was definitely mitigated. And Anthony Leal has a lot to do with that.
Yeah, they were smart, and Leal was one on him, and then Carlisle as well. They were smart to try to force him to his left side. He's obviously a strong right hand, and he was doing everything he could to get to that right hand and to button up Leal. Leal's one of those players that you just hope and wish you could like steal 70% of the skills, natural born skills that like McKenzie has, say, and just give it to a player like that. But I don't think you get an Anthony Leal with those types of skills. It's a player like that doesn't necessarily have the God-given talent that has to fight through it and find it through just grit and attention to detail. And that's how you shape that kind of guy. Someone that I think finally has woken up for IU, has been kind of a little bit of frustration on the bench, has been Carlisle. And this may have been his best game of the season. Miles got into some foul trouble, which led to Carlisle's number being called. He finished with a stat line of 13 points, 5 for 12 from the field, 1 for 3 from 3, 2 for 5 from the line. He was real frustrated with some of those misses. They had great shots on him at the free throw line. 4 rebounds, 1 assist, 1 steal. Just better shot selection from him in this game, I think, is what really helped him get into rhythm. And I did notice during those one or two of his really good runs where he's a player in this one, other than different from other games, where he's really playing on that razor's edge with anger. I mean, you could see him really getting frustrated, especially when he was at the line that one time. It was really almost, he may have been jawing to the ref because he was getting frustrated with some no calls when he was getting banged around. And I think it was Galloway or Goody that was in there trying to calm him down and shut him up. But you see other players. We've seen Xavier Johnson or other players that when they get to that heated part, it affects their play in a bad way. And it almost might affect Carlisle in the good way. What are your thoughts on Carlisle's game?
It was his best. It was his best game of the year. Definitely his best game against upper level competition. Against what you would call a Big Ten type opponent or a Power 5 type opponent. That was his. To me, that was his best. His most, and not just his best game, his most impactful game as well. I think Kanan Carlisle is a bit of an enigma because when we came in this year, I think we all were salivating at the concept of a Rice Carlisle backcourt.
Mm-hmm.
You have there was a Pac-12 newcomer of the year in Miles Rice, and then you have an AP National Player of the Week and Kanan Carlisle. They're both going into their sophomore season. They're just these two really. It's like the truly dynamic backcourt that IU feels like it's been missing since. Well, maybe Rojo and Blackman, or
Mm-hmm.
Blackman and Yogi would be probably the better.
Mm-hmm.
Since those types of guards, it's been at least a decade since we've seen that level of talent, acumen, skill, whatever attribute you want to put there. Defensively, you saw two dogs who could just shut down a perimeter, which is something IU's been missing too in those areas. Not to say guys don't try hard, and it's not a knock by any stretch on Trey Galloway. What it really is, because he could come in as a 6 man, or you could run maybe a best lineup where you have the 3 of them, in the game at one time, and then you have a Luke Goody or a Mackenzie Mbako, depending on matchups in the 4 spot, and then Ballo or Renew in the 5, depending on game situations and just who's playing well and who the other team's going. That hasn't happened this year. It happened a little bit last night. I think for the first time we saw what that could have looked like last night when you had the 3 guards in there. So back to Carlisle, he was much more, he was just much more aggressive offensively, because I think he felt like he wasn't looking over his shoulder for another player to maybe pick up his scoring, or that he was, okay, I'm now option 3, option 4, option 5 in the offense. I think for the first time, he felt like he could go in there and make plays and create shots and create opportunities. There was a great sequence. I think it was 3:30 in the second half, where they're and one of the big issues IU sometimes has in their ball screen game is you can almost predict where the ball's going to go.
Mm-hmm.
when they're reading the defense, it's one thing, but another part of it is it's almost like they're trying to force it, maybe necessarily to, usually it's Ballo or the ball handler, level 1, level 2 stuff. And he just did it wasn't even really a cut. It was a cut, but it was kind of walked it down and ended up wide open for the layup. So as Ballo is moving over, he sees the tag is moving over to cover Ballo to try to take away that pass because it's, again, so predictable. And Galloway just snuck a pocket pass right to him, and he just laid it up and in for an easy 2 points, running down the other way. And those are the types of plays that if you want to get Oumar Ballo open, that's how you do that. Because now that tag defender's got to be worried about Kane and Carlisle cutting on the layup. If you're just standing in a corner, it's easy to guard that because you can have enough time to recover. But if you're in motion, if you're now a viable scoring threat, that's a much different type of situation. And he saw that last night and really those are the types of plays he was making that I haven't seen from him yet. So he's capable of doing it. Would love to see more of that from him moving forward.
Yeah, and you mentioned something there that I just wanted to talk on. You've actually said it a couple times with this 3-guard lineup that IU's been able to go to in this game. And I think probably the cause of that was Tucker being out late. He wasn't able to go to his 3 rotation of those bigger forwards between Tucker, McKenzie, and Goode. So it may be another injury learning curve, forcing our coaching staff, forcing Woody to learn as has the thing with Malik's injury done. So I think that's hopefully they see that how it is. Again, I don't want Tucker to be out for good, like we have lost Malik. But if he's out one more game and we get to show the coaching staff that this 3-guard thing is a positive thing as Indiana slowly gets smaller, which is very interesting to think about too overall. We'll see how this affects things moving forward. So I want to kind of move on to maybe the guys that struggled a little bit in this game. And McKenzie has really been struggling a lot recently. Just finished with 6 points in this game on 1 for 5, 0 for 4 from 3, hit all of his free throws. Just played 5 minutes in the second half. We didn't see him go in at all in overtime. And if we also look back, I mean, he really, since the Penn State game, he hasn't showed up. I mean, he had that great game at Penn State, scoring 21 points and going up 7 for 13 from the field. Since then, just reading back the last couple games, he goes 1 for 5 last night, 0 for 4 from 3. The Illinois game, 1 for 10, 0 for 3. The Iowa game, 2 for 6, 0 for 3. And then USC, 0 for 8, 0 for 5. So really struggling part of section, and obviously not at a time when IU wants that kind of thing to be happening. Tough to figure out what's going on. He's always been kind of that stone-faced player. He doesn't show a lot of emotion, so it's hard to try to read him in that regard. But body language, defense, it still kind of looks the same. He still is getting beat, so it doesn't really show there. I don't know. What are your thoughts as from a coach's eyes and standpoint? What do you see in this slump? What do you think's going on with McKenzie?
It's some guys, when they're hitting, are world beaters, and when they're missing, you just kind of want to put them in the locker room and in a tub of ice to cool off mentally. Maybe, I don't know, put on some Looney Tunes in the locker room and just have them kind of clear their mind and try to get back out there and do it again. I think part of it is, and again, you look at a kid like Makama Mbako, and it's still a 19-year-old kid. Yeah. And a 19-year-old kid that basketball before he got to Indiana was not hard. He thought it was hard. But it really wasn't hard. I'm doing the travel circuit. I'm doing this. Well, if you're a top 30 player, you're going to and you originally have a scholarship offer to Duke University, and you're not playing at a Mount, even if you're playing at a Mount Verde or an IMG, you're still a young man playing against other young men versus a young man playing against actual bodybuilding men. And I don't think I think everybody kind of deals with that a little differently. And I think sometimes for him, when you see that stoic face, sometimes is it focus or is it Is he just kind of getting into his own head? I don't know, but I can kind of look at him and be like, I think he's kind of getting in his own head thinking, why can't I hit this? Or I'm frustrated because this isn't happening for me. And it's like he's kind of creating his paradigm in there. And then all of a sudden he's on the defensive end and he's watching his defensive assignment blow by him for a layup. And he's it's just building.
Mm-hmm.
So ideally, like when you're dealing this with younger kids, you try to get them out for a moment and get them back in quick and then try to build confidence. I mean, it used to be, well, go to the end of the bench, young man. Well, you're 12 years old. I mean, at this point, all the kid knows is I screwed up and I'm more scared. But for a kid like Mbako, it may just be where, getting him, trying to build confidence and is kind of, I think, the first order of the day, that he needs to know and needs to kind of be emphasizing that scoring lines aren't as important, that even if you're not hitting, you have to contribute. And I go back to what, years ago, watching Bonzi Wells on a press row and being surrounded by some NBA scouts and this guy from the Lakers. Wells was off. I mean, like, he was going for the max scoring record. And that's why I was up there with a buddy of mine who was doing on the TV station. He goes, the scout's like, okay, he's having a bad scoring game, talking about Wells, but he's been setting his teammates up. His offensive threats enough to open up his team so they can be successful.
Mm-hmm.
And he realizes it. And so now he's making the right play, whether he's rebounding, defending, whether he's just cutting hard, whether he's putting himself in position on the offense to draw a double team or to draw attention so his teammates can be more successful. Even without the basketball, he's making an impact. And I that's always stuck with me, where it's like, for a player that's really talented, just their mere presence, they have to have the presence of mind to be able to make that work and to make his team better around them. And I think he's still learning how to do that. I also think this is a kid that's not used to ever being pulled out of a game and thrown on the bench for the whole game. He's always been too valuable to do that. So I think maybe putting him on the bench and saying, okay, look, we have other guys that can do the job. You may want to, here's what you're going to have to do to get back on the floor and get back up to 30 minutes a game.
Yeah. Well, and we've talked about that on this show before, and I've said it before, more so when we've been approaching and criticizing his defense is exactly what you said, where he's just been a kid where just his God-given gifts, he's been able to coast. And I don't mean to say that in a negative standpoint, but he's been able to coast through the game. And also when you go through these traveling circuits, the AAU and everything, at least defensive wise, there's not as much defense being played. And when you're his size and his athletic ability, he doesn't have to do much in those regards on defense. And this is what we always see when you see that the high level talent sometimes struggles to make that leap to college. And I think that's what maybe we're running into again. And I think it's because he is less of IU's go-to this year than he was last year as well. So there's less attention to getting him that. Now, in my mind, hopefully to counteract that, let's lock him and Calbert Chaney and Cook Hall for over the weekend and just get your fingers in there into that brain, Calbert, and give him some of that mojo that you have, because there's some similarities between those two and what Chaney used to do that he can impart into that young one, and hopefully we see better things. Because again, when you have a good player that is struggling, but you are able to at least find the ways to win, and this was things that I used and words that I used to explain when we were going on our good winning streak with Carlisle struggling. When we would talk about Carlisle, you had a player or a round sitting in the chamber ready to go off. And I guess that's the positive way to look at Mackenzie struggling right now, that he could find it again and that bullet could go off. So I hope for that. Another kind of thing struggles in this game was Rice. He struggled with foul trouble early in the game, and I think a little bit in the second half that led to a lot of bench time for him, and which kind of let Carlisle find his game. But when he did get in, I felt like his shot selection was a little questionable. There was that play late in the game when he got in there, and Ohio State was having their comeback where he took that long two. and missed that early in the shot clock. And it was wild because I had watched so much of the game and didn't really notice IU taking long twos at all. It wasn't really in my brain until he took that one. Then suddenly it was bad. And I think that, coupled with Galloway's full court press turnover, was really had me concerning about IU winning the game, and possibly even kept IU from closing it out in regulation. What did you think on Rice's struggles?
I think it was, I think foul trouble really kind of hit him early. And I think part of it was he was the best, not to take anything away Anthony Leal, who had, again, a great game, but he was, I think, probably feeling a little bit of the pressure of having to kind of deal with everything he was having to deal with having one of the biggest bodies in the country in the game with 2 6'9" power forwards playing with him. And Anthony Leal, who is, I mean, he's built like a guard, but he's a Swiss Army knife who can defend just about anywhere. But I think Rice was early on just not really necessarily in position, because I think he was trying to maybe take on too much defensively. I'll put that out there. That was the feel I had. Looking at the game as we kind of progressed over his time off, they found other ways where they didn't need him in there. And this was, I think, by not needing him, it was more of a situation where they found enough solutions already on the floor that he didn't have to go and have a career night for them to win at Ohio State. That's actually a good thing for your team, is that even when your point guard has to do like little things, or you don't have to have impactful play out of just one or two players, like it's always the same guys. I mean, I love the fact that last night it was a different group that had to go in. Granted, Ballo's going to do Ballo things, but Miles Rice didn't have to be there in that sort of scoring manner. I don't think he turned it over a whole heck of a lot. I'm going to look at that real quick. But I
just have one turnover.
One turnover. He kept the offense moving. There are a couple times, like there was that baseline out of bounds play coming out early in the first half where IU got their first lead, and they ran some action looking like it was going to Galloway, and then they just ran him again on the back side of it. And he was in, cut hard, right position, kind of got him going a little bit. He had another play early, and I think earlier in the game where he just, Ballo they were in 2-man game, and he had, a double gap to drive, and he drove it, got the layup. I think you're right, but I think as time goes on, this is something that needs to be, I hope that they emphasize more, is that need for level 3 reads, and you don't have to just pull the trigger every time you think you have an opening.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where that one or two-dimensional offense that we see sometimes from IU, that's sort of almost predictable. We know where the ball is going. Like if the ball goes in a player's hands in certain situations, that shot's going up, hell or high water. It's just coming. It's just coming. And you don't see that necessarily on other programs, because again, it's like knowing how to make that correct read at the right place, right time. And no, you just don't need a 19-footer in this situation. What you need to do is, okay, find the opening, dribble through, hit somebody else. Let's get some other secondary actions going. You don't have to have everything off of a striking action, is what I'm trying to say. You don't have to have everything off of an attacking action going downhill. You can kick it out, run some other just moving the ball and getting better and open looks. And when they do that, I use a really good basketball team. When they're trying to force it, it's scary.
Yes. Well, yes. And it's good to know that we can make those long twos and those 19-foot shots, but it's when it comes in the offensive possession, when there's 2 digits on the shot clock, that shouldn't be. It shouldn't be, unless, of course, you're thinking you're Jalen Hood-Schifino, or maybe Tucker next year when he's closer to that lockdown, or gets maybe a little bit more arc on that line drive, 19-foot shot that he likes to hit. Something I teased him on earlier, and I'll put you a little bit on the spot, and maybe you see it, maybe you don't, but you've got more of that coach's brain. And going into this game, obviously, we wanted to see adjustments from this coaching staff moving forward. Was there anything, as far as just how the coaching staff approached this game, that you saw in this one compared to maybe the last 2 games?
I think the personnel was probably the big thing. I mean, and that was I think there's a lot of times with adjustments. I think people always look for something schematic. When I look for adjustment, my first adjustment is what are you doing personnel wise? Like, how are you shaking up? Like, who you play is kind of determines how you play in many respects. And that's, so from an action standpoint, or just even from a philosophical standpoint, going again with three drivers, who are three guys who can make plays more so than having just two, which is usually what they're running. Because as much as Mbako has improved as a straight line driver, as much as Goody's improved as a straight line driver, I don't think anybody's going to call them truly ball handling playmakers. I don't think you could get away with that. So that personnel thing for me was critical. I really liked how they were using just trying to get the ball penetrated. They started with post penetration. I feel like when this team does post, it's like the more they can get Ballo in movement versus just going to stay on a block. As long as they're getting Ballo in the post by going high low, getting him north south, it's better. I wasn't really seeing them as much kind of going into that sort of, and I haven't seen a whole lot of this in the last few games where they just stick a big on a block and try to read and react off of that. The sort of Purdue Zach Edey sort of, we're going to move off of those types of reads. So we're seeing a lot of that. I think defensively, you're also just seeing a little better weak side. I think a lot of it was their weak side defensive changes where they were kind of, at the very least, emphasis points where they were getting guys in the right position to keep guys off the glass. I thought IU did very well at controlling the rebounding game. I think they were plus 10, plus 11 and second chance points. And a lot of that comes down to, they knew how to use their physical advantages and they knew how to use their gift, their players better in that situation, and they were able to control elements of the game that created a win. So, I mean, you kind of say for the coaching staff that with all the distractions going on this week, and I can't help but think that at least somebody opened up their Twitter feed and saw something. They actually kind of locked in enough and figured out kind of what they wanted to do. I would say that they're getting to a point in the season where, and I was kind of watching towards the end of the game, just how into it Mike Woodson was and how then the bench was, and that's a good thing. The danger level is you don't want to over orchestrate. That last possession where Goody got the three, the designed action did not go as planned. I found that coaches' boards are good for two things. They're good for tossing behind you, so you don't throw it on the floor. You never hold your own coaching board. I've also found that they're useful sometimes just to get your kid to draw something while they're bored. Sometimes you can overuse the whiteboard, and I think that you don't necessarily you get a lot of that done in your preparation and training and getting your players' basketball IQ up to a level in the connectivity there. And I think that in that last sequence when Rice got the layup blocked, I think it was Rice who got the layup blocked, and Ballo was able to get the tip out. Or basically, I was almost pushing the ball to Goody for the last shot. That was actually, what was drawn up. You kind of just knew where it was going. And the same thing was true. There was another one that came ATO where Galloway had nowhere to go, and that's where Carlisle had to force a shot up late. So I thought that the coaching staff, it's like you can almost overmanage a possession. And sometimes I feel like that you just watching that was kind of interesting towards the end of the game. And yet IU still found a way to make the right play.
Yeah, and that to me it was interesting too to decide to go to try to look for that jumper in that moment as well, or to go to Rice for that layup when he's been so cold, I think, in a lot of the rest of the game. And you said something interesting as well, mentioning, because to me it seemed like they tried to game plan to get it back to Ballo some more. But I think as you said there, it may have just been a personnel situation. As Coach Chansoni has said, and you've heard many times, he has a love affair with Anthony Leal and how good he is at the entry pass. And just by that personnel change of Leal getting so many more minutes and being in there at the beginning, you have upped your success in entry passing. So maybe an emphasis by the coaching staff to get it in there. Maybe just something happy coincidence through personnel. Could be a little bit of both. But I think hopefully we'll see. I don't know. It'll be very interesting to see next week what the starting lineup is. Because I've been up and down on this show with where I've wanted Trey Galloway. If you go back to the beginning of the season, I was all for him coming off the bench because he's that great energy guy, that great veteran, and be also equally because of the way Woodson likes to nearly wholesale his subs, just to have that leadership in the second unit was going to be a good thing. Then we lead to a few games into the season, and I was flip-flopping on it. He was great in the starting lineup, and he was great in that position. Now we've kind of gone back to it, where it's nice to have Leal in there being that glue guy to set the tone, and then you've got Trey coming off the bench. So interesting flip-flops in that regard. We'll kind of tip it over now, looking at some stats in this game. You spoke on some of those. You mentioned the second chance points. That's kind of obviously a big one that stands out in this one for IU, with 17 second chance points, and they were a plus 11. You were close. You said 11 or 10. Equally so, the 23 bench points, I think that ties back again to the way the starting lineup was used. You had one player in there that's not going to score. So granted, your bench players are going to come in and you're going to have more scoring from that, which is a good way to keep things up. What are other stats that you see looking at the box score?
It felt like turnovers were pretty good for IU. And I don't know the per half, but it felt like they were better at not turning the ball over as the game went on. So, I think there was it, and by good, it's there were 10 turnovers in an overtime game it's not a bad place to be.
Yeah. Two of them came from in overtime.
Oh, they did come in overtime. Thank you.
Two turnovers.
You did. So okay, then that would be more concerning. Sometimes it's hard to remember when you think back the next morning when you're going, wait, when did those actually happen? But in the but it was also because of the full court press also was the other thing. So that would actually kind of push your turnover. So but again, aggregately, they had just enough where they actually did some other stuff better on the offensive end where they didn't turn it over as much there. I thought 3-point shooting, especially in the second half, was really good. I think they shot 50% from they were 4 of 8 from 3 in the second half. That's just that was notable to me as I was going through the stat sheet as I was watching the game last night. And that's a lot of that has to do with Luke Goode hitting the way that he was. But and their volume was again kind of about where it was. I think sometimes people, especially when you look at Ken Pom or Torvik and they look at ranks, IU is still in the 320s on their volume of 3-point shooting, but the percentage is over 30%. So you're getting maybe 1 or 2 looks more a game. And I think aggregately that's because 3-point shooting's up all across the country. We're seeing this at every, and again, we're seeing it at every level where where more programs are shooting threes and shooting more than over the course of a game. So I think IU did a much better job of hitting, when you kind of get that going from a 1 for 6 to a 4 for 8. That was critical for them during that game. And then again, hitting the last one was they went in on a 3-point shot. So that was key. Free throw shooting. Oh, there's the big one for me. Free throw shooting. They got to the line. Anytime you can make more than your opponent misses or shoots, when you make more than your opponent shoots, you're in great shape. So that was critical. And even Omar Ballo. If Omar Ballo hits free throws, that blows up another team's scouting report. Because now it's like, oh, and by the way, don't let him dunk. Foul him. Don't let him, you can't do hack a Ballo like I think you could do against Arizona a year ago at this time. So,
you saw Ballo on one of those. He had a pretty clean layup that he got fouled on, and he missed it, and he was really mad at himself. That was nice to see.
Saw that. So, yeah. So that was. Again, it was a shot making game, a lot like the Palestra was. It's like the team who makes them, and that's. I tell the kids it's really easy. You put the orange thing more time. The other guy, you win. The other guy doesn't. Everything else is just details, and we complicate the heck out of it. So it's kind of what we do. But when you can get it down to shot making, Chad, that's ultimately what you want. When you can get it down to that element, I think that's what we saw last night. Was another game where Ohio State had a game where it came down to who put the ball through the orange thing. And it wasn't a schematic thing. It wasn't like, boy, this is a glaring problem that one team or the other team had. There were some shots at Ohio State. They had clean looks, and I thought they did. They're going to do structural damage to their backboards. Some of that stuff was just. It's like, man, I've seen shot puts a better touch, and it's like, and it's nice to see another program has struggles with that too sometimes, because after all the years we've seen struggles with IU with shooting. So nice to see IU had just enough advantage in shot making that they made a difference.
Yeah, and without looking at the stat sheet, this is something I do to Martha every so often, because it always amazes me when I look at the plus minuses. Don't look at them. I'm going to quiz you on something, and I see one that's kind of an outlier or something I don't expect. Take your guess at who had the highest plus minus in this game, if you didn't look at that yet.
I'll be honest, I never do.
Okay, good.
But I will go anyway.
This one it did shock me, so I'll give you that hint to it.
Oh man, Langdon Hatton?
No, that'd be a pretty good one. I always try to point it out if it's at least someone that has a decent amount of minutes. It was actually Miles Rice in this one.
Miles Rice, I believe that. Okay.
And at a +9, and then Galloway was just behind him. And shockingly enough, the highest was Anthony Leal, which is interesting. I guess through those minutes and stuff, and the offense, I guess that he doesn't apply. It's interesting. Again, it's flawed stat.
But it's actually good. What was the variance between Leal and Rice? I'm just curious.
-9 and +9.
Okay. So that is very interesting when you kind of look at that variance versus, but it's. And again, part of that also was the fact that Leal may have been minus. There are some flaws with it, but that's interesting. That was Miles Rice, and that that even for the amount of minutes he was on there, you could still see he had some positive impacts.
Well, and then equally as shocking too, when you look at it, the third best is Mackenzie Mbako at +5. So,
man,
there just shows you how flawed it truly is, because these plus minuses don't pass the eye test. To the viewer in this game.
You've heard my good friend Mike Weeman talk about box plus minus BPM. That's on X's and Joe's. That's our stat. That's the one that we use. It's aggregately speaking. So but it's one of those deals where it's individual games. It gets kind of interesting just to see. Kind of tells, but it can be kind of more qualitative. Kind of tells you a little bit more about the game.
Yeah, you try to look at it. For me, I try to look at it from a mismatch lineup standpoint. Like, where did this matchup line up? I like to see kind of more of those plus minuses as far as player groups. That's something that'd be a lot more interesting to be able to see on a quick basis after games. Obviously, that's a stat you got to dive into a little bit deeper going into it. But any other lingering storylines or anything in this game before we kind of close things out that you want to approach?
At this point, turnaround it's not really a quick turnaround because it's a Friday night game. I think that's been weird over the last few years watching. Just you look at the college basketball calendar and it's like, it's Friday night. I took the day off work yesterday, and I was like, I feel like today's Sunday. So, but it's like, because not just you had an IU game and then everything else. So, I think what's interesting to me is, but I think the lingering question is Tuesday's coming. You're going to Evanston. Evanston's always, a tough place for every team to play, but IU's not had a heck of a lot of luck up there over the last few years. But it's just how do you respond? How do you build? Where does this go? And I look at this, and it's a day by day thing. It's a game by game thing. What's going to happen whatever is going to happen is going to happen. Whenever it happens, it's going to happen when it happens. And whatever that is, it is what it is. So at this point, you just kind of enjoy what you can when you can. Enjoy the game by game performance. Look and see what these kids are doing on the court and kind of and when they're doing a game like last night where they gave the effort they gave, can they keep that effort going is critical right now. And I think that for them, just playing through this, because life throws you adversities, the game throws you adversities on the court, off the court, whatever. I love the fact that, they responded the way that they did last night, and to not just get too wrapped up in the big picture, when you're sitting in front of your TV or you're sitting in the stands watching the game. That's, I think, and that would be the other lingering thing I have is, just can we come together during these games and be like, okay, look, it's appreciate what we have, appreciate when these kids do the right thing and do good things. That, I think, to me, that's the important area. And I'm thrilled for these young men. I really am, that they were able to go in and after 2 back-to-back 20-point plus losses, they were able to get a victory in a Big Ten road environment.
Yep. And final kick to you. I always like when my guests are just promote yourself, promote X's and Joe's, tell the people on here what the show is, when to see it, and all that, where to find it.
So we're on the Back Home Network along with Assembly Call doing the work, Crimson Cast, and the Dribble Drive with Austin Render. We're one of those. We're in that as well. It's a long form podcast that my buddy Mike Weemuth and we've been doing this conversation since the mid '90s, since towards the end of the Night era, and we really try to go to in depth topics for college basketball in general, and then tie it back to IU. Our last episode was on momentum, how program momentum works. We also look to, again, we'll be looking to maybe have a conversation, episode 23.5 coming up, to kind of talk about kind of where, from a 40,000 foot view, where the program is right now. Like, maybe people are having questions as to where are we and how did we get here? And we may be starting to have that conversation here fairly soon. We got one we're trying to get with Jared Morris about how programs set expectations. So those are the types of topics that we delve into pretty deeply and go for a while. So, but I'll have a lot of fun doing it. At the very least, I think, Chad, you may feel the same way about this. I love it. I do. I love it if people get something out of our shows, but it's just great sometimes just to be able to have an excuse to talk to a good friend. I get to talk basketball with my buddy Mike. We spent 3 days in Philadelphia. I don't think the conversation stopped in 3 days. We should have recorded it. We would have actually saved ourselves. We could have just recorded and put it all, recorded all the StreamYard. But it's just nice to be able to have, to be able to do this with a good friend.
Yeah, look soon for the Bob Moats IRL streams as he's walking down the street. 2 buddies sitting there talking, and that's what I love about watching your guys' show as someone that can just sit back and watch 2 big basketball minds, guys that know and are able to dive deep into the minutia that a lot of us, regular Hoosier Nation, while we are a smart and very educated fan base, these guys have a wealth of knowledge in it. So I urge you greatly to not miss an episode. Add it to your favorites on wherever you listen to podcasts. Follow it. Make sure if you probably already are, if you're listening to this show, but make sure you're following on YouTube, the Back Home Network, and seeing all that. So thanks again for being with us, for being with me on this show, and always great to have you, and have you around more would be great. And I think that's close to do it. I mean, to close out talking about this game, I think just the aggressiveness, the focus that IU showed in this is what we've been hoping for, is kind of what needed to happen, coming from all the vitriol and everything that we heard going into this game and this fan base. Was it pretty? Was it perfect? Was all the X's and O's the way they should be? No, not necessarily, but at least we saw some things to build on moving forward, and we're getting back to those steps forward rather than tripping backwards. The game coming up is against Northwestern. It's Wednesday, a 7 p.m. game. We are playing up there. They have had IU's number as of recently, so it's not going to necessarily be an easy one. It's kind of really another team similar to Ohio State when you look at their record that has had to fight in a lot of their games. They are 2-4 in the Big Ten. A lot of those losses, when you look at their scores, have been relatively close, barring the Purdue game that they had recently. But it's going to be one that we're going to have to show up again like we have in this game. So be interesting to see what we get out of this Hoosier team moving forward. I'm excited to see what it is, and hopefully we keep that hope alive. Again, the big word on this show is hope, and the hope is still alive. So we'll see what comes with IU forward. Thank you for being with us. Follow me on Twitter at General Chadwick. You can follow Coach Moats at Bob Moats on Twitter as well. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you're watching on YouTube. Follow if you're watching on Twitter as well. Those of you on the different podcast streams, I appreciate you greatly watching and following along. We'll be back again the morning after the next game. Until then, as always, go out there, have yourselves a wonderful day, and let's go Hoosiers.